Good evening and welcome. Thank you very much for those who came along in person today. I know it's very sunny outside, so it's difficult to drag yourself to a meeting, but I'm glad you came because we have some very serious and very important topic to discuss. Welcome to Erasmus, from European solidarity to political weapon. That will be the question we'll be discussing today. I welcome those also who are joining us on the live stream for this MCC Brussels event. And before we begin, though, unscheduled, but there has been unprecedented attacks on the Hungarian presidency. And today, the European Parliament passed a resolution. There was things said in the Parliament, attacks made on Hungary. And I feel it's important that we ask Frank Furedi, the Executive Director of MCC Brussels, to please take the podium and address those issues.
I'm only going to be a minute. Listening to the debate today reminded me of Mao's struggle session, where everybody tried to outdid everybody else in terms of attacking and denouncing Hungary in a way that at times seemed quasi-hysterical. And for me, what we're seeing here is a parliamentary lynch mob that is quite determined to embark on a crusade, a zealous ideological crusade targeting Hungary. But the important thing to realize in this is that if they have their way, which I don't think they will, if they have their way and manage to usurp the legal norms within the European Union, they will not stop at Hungary. That will not be the final word in this battle, because tomorrow, after they manage to dispose of Hungary, Poland is next. And the day after tomorrow, after they did that to Poland, every country, every political movement with a sovereignist inclination, every sovereignist nation that takes its independence seriously will be in the firing range. So I just want everybody to remember and think that these things are very, very serious. And in the months ahead, these attacks will not be less, but will be more, because what we're seeing is a propaganda war that has only just begun seriously, and is likely to take far greater action. It will become far more serious in the months ahead. So these were our views on this, and I think that we should take a stock of this and ensure that all of us find a way of fighting back, of articulating our views, making sure that our voice is heard, because there are millions and millions of people throughout Europe from all kinds of nations who are on our side, rather than with the basic lynch mob that has done this today. Thank you.
Very sobering words and a sobering warning. Thank you, Frank. We've been here, MCC Brussels, since last October, and we've covered many serious issues, many important issues. But I have to say that the issue we're going to discuss this evening is one that I feel very strongly about. The idea that you would target young people's opportunities and education is really beggars belief. But that's what we'll be talking about tonight. People across Europe proudly celebrate the Erasmus program as an engine of European solidarity and educational aspiration. Each year, thousands of students from Europe and beyond participate in educational activities and mix with students from various nations, all of which are roundly celebrated by believers in EU integration. Yet from September, one group of students will be excluded from these activities: Hungarian students. The EU will expel 2/3 of Hungarian universities, representing 180,000 students from the Erasmus and Horizon programs. Joint research projects, they're going to be interrupted. Partnerships are going to be cancelled. Thousands of students who dreamed of education elsewhere in Europe will remain at home. Why have Hungarian students been singled out for such treatment? Ostensibly, the exclusion of Hungarian students concerns Hungary's sanctions under the EU rule of law conditionality mechanisms. The EU has prohibited public trusts in Hungary from entering into contracts with programs such as Erasmus Plus or Horizon, citing concerns about the governance and impartiality of Hungarian universities. We're going to ask some questions tonight. Is not the ideal of Erasmus for cultural and educational exchange across national, geographical, and cultural boundaries? Is there even a legal solid basis for the actions of the European Union? Perhaps most importantly, are EU programs like Erasmus being turned into political weapons rather than engines of mutual understanding? These are important questions that we need to address on behalf of the young people in Hungary. Rodrigo Ballester, head of the Center for European Affairs at MCC Budapest, former EU official and former member of the Cabinet of the Commissioner for Education, will be addressing these issues with us this evening. But beforehand, I'd like to ask a student, appropriately, a medical student from Semmelweis University in Budapest with extensive experience of the Erasmus program and someone who's been affected by these changes. Robert Pearson Bartel, please. Give Robert a welcome.
Dear attendees, ladies and gentlemen, I feel privileged to have the opportunity to speak before this esteemed audience today. I'm Robert Pearson, as mentioned before. I stand before you as a 23-year-old medical university student from Hungary, deeply concerned about the recent decision to suspend Erasmus funds from Hungarian students. While I understand the rationale behind this decision, I believe it is crucial to highlight the unintended consequence it has on students like myself, who very much are committed to their education. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the concerns raised regarding transparency. Accountability in general is an essential pillar of any democratic society, and it's important to address such issues. However, it's equally important to recognize that not all students should suffer for the actions of a few. The suspension of Erasmus funds not only affects current students, but also undermines the integrity of Europe as a whole. Yesterday, I visited the European Parliament, and in front of the plenary room, there was a fabulous sculpture called Confluences. It represents all the member states intertwined with metal rods and wires. And if you move one part of the sculpture, then all the other parts will move as well. I think this is a very similar scenario. The Erasmus program has been a shining example of European integration, cultural exchange, academic growth, and cross-border cooperation. I have plenty of friends who found their wives, husbands, career paths in this exchange. By denying Hungarian students the opportunity to participate, we not only lose out on personal and professional development, but also erode the trust and unity that Europe stands for. Erasmus is the only scholarship program that I'm aware of which provides additional benefits for individuals with disabilities or chronic illnesses. Being someone who personally experiences such an illness, this opportunity would be incredibly valuable for me. Moreover, I want to emphasize the strong European sentiment among most Hungarians. Eurobarometer proves that the trust we place into European institutions is well above EU average. And this highlights our belief in the common values and aspirations we share. I know that in this part of Europe and in the media, this voice cannot be heard these days. Suspending Erasmus funds undermines this trust and sends a disheartening message to those who look to Europe as a beacon of unity and cooperation. I urge the European Commission to explore alternative strategies and address the underlying causes of the problem while minimizing the adverse effects on students. This can be achieved through constructive dialogue, collaboration, including direct engagement with Hungarian universities if necessary. A focused approach that tackles the identified issues will protect the quality of education, uphold European unity, and prevent innocent students from bearing the consequences of decisions they had no involvement in. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good afternoon to everyone. Indeed, it is a very painful topic. It goes beyond anything we could have anticipated when this conditionality related to the rule of law was put on the table. Please allow me to give you a bit more like the political and especially the legal, not context, but the concerns I have, and also to explain you the situation, because the first thing here is to explain why. No one really is aware of what is going on. This is the first problem. I think it's a disgrace, but the first problem I have is that no one cares. No one is interested in that. Because still it's very theoretical. We don't see the tangible consequences. We might see them as from September, but not now. And actually, I also have the impression that in many places, especially here, whenever you do something with some buzzwords like rule of law, discrimination, academic freedom, I mean, it's enough to have the narcotic effect on consciences and brains, to go your way and to go and to do something as disgraceful as that. And so that's why we need here to explain exactly what is going on. In 2018, the Hungarian government reformed higher education and turned the majority of Hungarian universities into what they call public trusts, KEKVAS in Hungarian, that's the acronym, and with the aim of giving them more autonomy. How are those KEKVAS or those public trusts governed, managed? In several ways, but including, with board of trustees. So you have a curatorium, board of trustees. And basically 110 persons, were appointed in different board of trustees. 10% of them were politicians. And all of them were, Fidesz politicians, mostly ministers. Because the idea of this board of trustees is basically to pick up prestigious personalities that can bring opportunities, that can bring a fresh pair of eyes, and can bring, like a dynamism into those universities. That this is the problem. So the first thing I wanted to say is that, fine, this is a national competence. If you read carefully Article 165 of the treaty, the article on education, it says that both content and organization of education is a national competence. It's really written there black and white. So that's the first legal concerns, like the first legal question that comes to my mind. So, how come? Why do we have an infringement on a national competence? That's the first question. And then it's true that the decision of the European Union, and here I have to insist on also another very painful aspect to me, is that the decision whereby Hungary has been sanctioned has been drafted by the European Commission, has been proposed by the European Commission, but it has been voted by national ministers, by the peers, by your peers. Again, another thing that shows how divisive this conditionality can be. So let's not blame the European Commission too quickly, because the final decision has been taken by the Council. We cannot even blame the European Parliament here. They had no word. I know that they are very good at barking, but legally speaking, they didn't take this decision. They didn't propose it, they didn't vote it, nothing. Talk to the ministers. That's the second legal point. And what happened is that now you have a regulation on conditionality that has been, long awaited. It has been one of the political fights. And finally, together with the new COVID funds and the new budget that was adopted in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, this one was also adopted. And two countries had already second thoughts about it because they thought that it could be turned into a political weapon. Poland and Hungary. Surprise, surprise, it might have happened. Let's see. What does this regulation says? I'm not going to read it for you, but just one sentence that for me is really the key one, that it's supposed to apply to breaches of the rule of law that affects or seriously risk affecting the sound financial management of the European budget in a sufficiently direct way. So I insist on two things: sufficiently direct way, and also that risks, so affects or risk affecting. You have to prove those things. And actually even the judgment of the Court of Justice on that very case says that, yes, you need a genuine link, Is that the case? Can we find like even those legal, milestones applied now in this decision? I think this is a very, very fair question as well. And we should be extremely careful because, again, we have to avoid any intellectual or legal laziness. It's not because some decisions are taken in the name of the rule of law or in the name of anti-discrimination or the name of any pompous concept that actually they are legally right. And so we have to be careful here because apart from, the very specific case of Erasmus here, we also run the risk of allowing now a regime of financial blackmail that, apart from, being used as a weapon, and the budget has been already weaponized, is also an instrument whereby you can vacuum all the national competences that you want. At least you can clearly circumvent the golden rule of the European treaties. For me, it's Article 5, which says that whatever has not been given to the member states, to the Commission, sorry, to the EU, belongs to the member states. This is the key one, the key rule for me. This is like saying that in football you play with the feet and not with the hands. And I have the impression that this conditionality is also a formidable tool now to circumvent this golden rule. So we should also be very, very careful with that. And here, basically, the reasoning is that the fact that you may have 10% of politicians in those board of trustees is a serious risk for the management of the EU budget. Wait a minute. And so on that basis, you can exclude 2/3 of Hungarian university, all of them, all of the KEGVAS and all of the 180,000 students from those two programs, Erasmus, and let's not forget Horizon. Horizon is equally important. Horizon is a research program. It's more or less 70 billion euro. It's a program, by the way, that is already very politicized. I mean, it's very much the target of woke standards. You need to have a gender balance bibliography to get the funds and things like that. You need to, for example, to have a gender plan. I don't share this point of view, but you have to. And so again, that also gives us a hint about how the budget can also become a political weapon. And so again, let's think just legally for a minute. To what extent the presence of 10%, of politicians in those boards can be a real threat, so taking the words of the regulation, can risk affecting the union budget in a sufficiently direct way. Is it proven? When you read the decision of 15th of December, does the council, did the council adopt a decision that really proves that the presence of those politicians could be a threat? Do we have antecedents? Or are we speaking here about a hypothetical infringement? Are we speaking here about, it might happen, we never know, probably, I heard that. But the problem is that when legally you're adopting a huge sanction like this one, just in case, just if one day that might happen, you never know, this is a mockery of the rule of law. If you do that in the name of the rule of law, this is really infringing the rule of law in the name of the rule of law. I don't get it. Sorry, we have good reasons to be worried about it. Again, legally speaking, to adopt a sanction without an infringement, this is basically like the first thing you learn when you do criminal law. You cannot sanction without an infringement, only out of a suspicion, only out of an hypothetical infringement problem that might happen. Imagine that tomorrow, the UEFA, for example, kicks out all the Hungarian teams from a European tournament, just in case one player in one of those teams might get a red card during the tournament. It will be a massive outrage. And not only from a legal point of view, also from a moral and political point of view. Well, this is, in my view, what is happening now. So this decision is first, from a legal point of view, is very worrying. Huh? Here we have a massive, massive infringement of the presumption of innocence, because you are sentencing a country on things that never happened and that no one ever did. You have a problem also with the principle of proportionality. The regulation says that sanctions should be proportionate, except that in this case, the sanction applies to 100% of the students from those public universities, from those public trusts. 100%. How can you combine the principle of proportionality with the figure of 100%? I still don't get it. It's legally very worrying as well, because this is a collective punishment. I think Robert already made a point. It is a collective punishment. Legally speaking, morally speaking, politically speaking, this is unsustainable. And again, here we are adopting a sanction on an hypothetical ground, just in case. And, sometimes when I spoke about that with some ambassadors in Hungary, in Budapest, they told me, well, but that's the classic, this is the normal way, we all get infringements from the Commission and then you get sanctions sometimes. And my answer is, well, you're a diplomat, so I forgive your cynicism. You're allowed to say that in public. But between you and me, when is the last time that the Netherlands, Belgium, Hungary, or Spain, or Sweden has been sentenced, has been basically, they inflicted a sanction on them without a confirmation of the rule, without a judgment of the rule of the Court of Justice? That never happened. That never happened. Normally, the infringements, the way it goes, according to Article 269, is that the Commission takes you to court, and once the court says, yes, you're guilty, then you can get a fine, but not before. And never just in case. So from a legal point of view, this is indeed a very, very worrying mechanism, not least because it's, again, circumventing the golden rule of the principle of allocation of competences, of conferral of competences. Don't forget, again, that here the EU is asking Hungary to do reforms on a field that does not depend on its competences. It's not a competence of the European Union to, decide how universities should be organized. It's none of their business, actually. Last thing, also from a legal point of view, that here we also experiences a massive, one more example of double standards. Because you don't like the idea that politicians can be in board of trustees? Well, maybe I don't think it's the best idea. But then you should also target France, Austria, Belgium, and Germany. We have concrete examples there. So why not? Okay, you don't like this idea, Commission? You are basically waging a financial war against Hungary? Okay, fine, but do it with everyone then. And they don't. Because another legal problem that I see here, and it's a classic of European law, and no one really cares about, is that in this legal system, the Commission has the monopoly to launch infringements. And it can do it, the Commission can do it, or not. And it doesn't need to justify itself. So at the end, when you have a mechanism like the rule of law, like the conditionality, according to the rule of law, that basically sets extremely high standards that allows to put you one country into the microscope, while at the same time it legally also allows you not to do anything else about anyone else, I think we are getting very, very close to arbitrariness. And this is, again, what is happening here. And so, legally speaking, the Commission can throw all its weapon against Hungary without even bothering to start investigating some other cases, although they exist. And by the way, just to also something else that makes me think that there's not only a legal matter behind that, is that in February, all those politicians resigned. And still, the problem is not solved because, surprise, surprise, more conditions were brought into the table. Again, in the name of the rule of law, it sounds very Orwellian to me. Speaking about double standards as well, you have to realize something is that Erasmus, which is indeed the most successful European initiative, at least the most consensual one everyone likes. Every mother-in-law knows about Erasmus. It became a word of the dictionary. It became really the best business card of the European Union, It speaks to absolutely everyone. And it's great. We had movies about it. We have anecdotes. And I remember when in the cabinet of Mr. Navracic, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of Erasmus. It was basically 9 million people benefited from it. Even we mentioned that it was 1 million babies. It's really one success story. And indeed, it's one of the few things that the EU can bring to the youth. Because they bring a lot of lip service, like, the youth now is for the first time, they will not have the same opportunities as the previous generations. They speak a lot about it, but the only concrete thing they can bring is Erasmus. And it's a good one. But again, as from September, except for Hungarians. And no one else. And actually, you shouldn't compare. It's not only between member states, it's actually beyond. The Erasmus program, for example, also welcomes as fully fledged members countries like Iceland, Norway, Turkey, Northern Macedonia, or Serbia. They are as fully fledged members of this program as Spain or Sweden are. And so at the end, as from September, we'll also have the very painful situation that Turkish, Macedonian, Icelandic, Norwegian students can fully benefit from Erasmus as the third countries, but not Hungarians who are a member state. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm extremely happy that Turkish or Macedonians or Serbians can benefit from it. I'm absolutely against the weaponization of Erasmus against everyone. But again, here, that makes the singling out of Hungarian youth even more scandalous. Even worse than that, you also have the Erasmus Mundus sub-program, and that applies to everyone. And it means that under the Erasmus Mundus program, you can bring students from 5-star AAA democracies like Iran, Venezuela, Nigeria. Everyone is welcome in the Erasmus Mundus. Everyone, again, except Hungarians. So in terms of double standards, I think here we reach the highest level ever. And also from a political point of view, it's a major mistake. It is a major mistake, not only because it's a financial blackmail, not only because the legal case is actually extremely weak, but also because, you know, again, you are, that might be totally counterproductive. You mentioned, Robert, in your introductory remarks that the level of support in Hungary of the EU is extremely high, still high. I wonder if it will be in the next European elections, for example. And again, this is an infamous disgrace because it's a blunt discrimination. And it's also about taking hostage youth that needs opportunities. When the European institution says that indeed youth have their own problem after the COVID, also because, you know, in terms of inequalities, in terms of opportunities, equal opportunities, it's true. We all agree that this is one of the problems. And again, it's a problem, it's a totem, it's a sacred cow that no one touches, except when it comes to Hungarian universities and Hungarian youth. And so I will also, you know, send you the message to please wake up a bit. This is a very, the gravity of this question is extremely high. And the effects, you can already feel them now. As we speak, even before the sanctions have been adopted, the reputational damage of Hungarian universities is already there. Some are getting already kicked out from some consortia. Some projects, you know, some articles that can no longer be published. I heard about professors that send articles to prestigious universities and they were told, no. Hungarian universities, no thank you. And this is also a problem not only for the students, but also for the parents. My kids might not be able to go on Erasmus in 3 or 4 years. I don't know. Maybe the situation will evolve. But I'm not sure they will be able to do it if they studied in a Hungarian university. It's also a problem for the 30,000 Erasmus students that now every year go to Hungarian universities. It's a problem also for the industry. You have a lot, and in several cities and several Hungarian universities are basically totally intertwined with the industry. Think about the University of Győr and Audi. They're basically, you know, merged. And are we going now to tell Audi, for example, that they cannot benefit from the Erasmus program? That it's not only about mobility, by the way. And then we think, oh, but maybe the Hungarian government is going to pay for that. Well, sorry, Erasmus is not a matter of money only. It's a matter of networks, it's a matter of mobility channels. You cannot improvise them. So the damage, you feel it already. And once, which is totally illegal, by the way, when some foreign universities from other member states get phone calls already to say, oh, you shouldn't include the Hungarian universities, this is bluntly illegal. And those things are happening. So it's a matter of an extreme gravity, also because it's about youth, it's about you taking hostage a youth, it's about the financial blackmail, but really pushed to its latest limits, because it's a huge and very cruel sanction adopted on no grounds, basically on hypothetical grounds. And again, because it shows also some type of fanaticism when some people are ready. And again, the people here, I insist, are not the European Commission. Also, they proposed the thing. They put the proposal on the table, but it was adopted by the ministers, by the national ministers, when they are ready, you know, just because they heard buzzwords like, oh, rule of law and some others, to adopt, you know, to basically weaponize the most successful European initiative and the most consensual ever, and to turn the most famous Erasmus into an infamous tool of financial blackmail. So please think about it. It is of an extreme gravity.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. At MCC Brussels, we think it's really important to involve the audience in our discussions. So we're really interested in hearing from you. And I'm going to ask you to take a minute to think about what you think about this program and to share that with us, and also to have the opportunity to ask our two panelists some questions. But before we go there, I do want to take the privilege of the chair and ask you a question. I've heard some people say, well, you know, that's the way sanctions work, that you design sanctions to really hurt. So from a moral and ethical point of view, why is it that you would say this is not just a regular group of sanctions, that there's something else happening here?
Thank you, John. First of all, because I still believe, sorry, I'm very naive, but I still believe that sanctions should be applied once there is an infringement. I'm very sorry. I'm extremely naive. Maybe I'm even virgin. I don't know. But I still believe that you cannot be sanctioned if you didn't do anything wrong. And so this is not the case again. You know, if you read the decision, for example, the decision look at the competences of this board of trustees? Not really. Did they take into account that the politicians resigned? No, because the situation is not solved. And so there again, you know, that makes it very, very special. Also from a legal point of view, in the European Union, as I said, first you need a judgment of the Court of Justice, and then you can get a fine, for example. In this case, it's all a priori. And again here, with the level of discretion of the European Union institutions, so Commission and the Council, that basically, the rules are drafted in a way that they can do basically whatever they want. And again, yeah, you say, oh yeah, when we adopt sanctions, for example, against Russia, of course the Russians are suffering. Yes, I know, the Russians are suffering. But we also know that there was a very big infringement of international law, a very obvious one. No? And here again, it's not the case. And one more thing, John, as well. Who do you want to sanction here? The government or the people? And why do you want to sanction them? Because they didn't vote the right way for 4 times in a row? And in this case, we also have a democratic debate here, no? That we should have as well. I mean, are we obliged to vote in a certain way or not? And again, let's be nuanced as well. Some of the measures that the Commission proposed and the Council adopted, against Hungary in the field of conditionality can maybe make sense. When I read, for example, about more transparency in the public procurement process, why not? This is indeed linked to the EU money. This is indeed, again, the EU competence. I don't have a problem with that, as long as they also ask the same things to the other member states, by the way, not only to one. But otherwise, it makes sense. But in this case, why are they after? They basically take a very spurious excuse in order to increase the pressure. And from a legal point of view, it makes me think indeed that there are too many hidden intentions behind. Legally is so weak that I'm just afraid that the rule of law is also becoming a pretext, to settle other political matters.
I know that the government did remove the ministers that were on the boards of trustees, but did they remove all of the politicians? Because I think there was some concern that there was politicians that were on the board and that they could in fact pass laws related to things. So have the conditions been met some of the way by the Hungarian government?
Well, the negotiations are ongoing, and it's likely that in the coming days, the Hungarian government will try to address some of those concerns. As far as I am aware, it's indeed not only about the politicians that I mentioned before, but also, for example, some local politicians, for example, a mayor. Except it is very common in Western Europe that the mayor is, in the board of a university. Yeah. Be it right or left, who cares? Is the mayor that is there. And also, apparently, it's also a question of the mandate, the length of the mandate. Some of these members of the board of trustees had a very actually unlimited mandate, and again, that was also a concern for the European Union. And again, let me stress this very clearly. I don't think it's a good idea to have a trustee that is going to stay there for life, because if you're appointed at 40, it means that you may have to stay 50 years in this board of trustees. I don't think it's a good idea. But even more importantly, I don't think it's the EU's business to do that. And then if they are nosy and they basically are intrusive about Hungary, then they should be intrusive with everyone. Otherwise, we have a massive case of double standards. And double standards in the name of the rule of law, again, is too Orwellian to me. I don't buy it.
Okay. Robert, 180,000 of your fellow students are could be deprived of a very important opportunity. What type of impact do you think that has on young people? Even just the worry that this might happen is a pressure at the moment.
I think the problem with high school students university students are in general that they have such a large amount of daily struggles that they don't have time to think about it really, and they just sweep it under the carpet, and they accepted it and read it in the news articles, but then they had more pressuring issues on their daily basis which were more important that day.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
And it's going to really isolate Hungarian students, that if this was implemented, it would mean that Hungarian students would be cut off from not just opportunities, but from interaction with other countries.
Yeah, and I think the most important part is that the Hungarian language is very unique. That's very beautiful and very
And
nice.
difficult.
and very difficult. But on the other hand, we don't speak our neighbors' languages. That's very rare in Europe. Germans, French, Belgian people speak their neighbors' languages. So they already have some knowledge about how to get around in Europe. But in Hungary, it's really hard to learn a language since your language is completely different. And this is one of the most best opportunities for Hungarian students to learn a language properly that they can use very well. So that's my main concern.
Goes against the very heart of what you would think Erasmus is all about, which is rather amazing to have sanctions like that. Can I come out to the audience now? Please raise your hand, and I'd love to hear what you think and hear what your questions are. To the back there. Yeah.
I've got the roving
Look at the microphone. Okay.
Well, since I have the microphone whilst everyone is thinking, and I did want to ask this question to begin with, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to jump in first. But Rodrigo, just one point of clarification. I mean, I think all over the world, politicians are involved in universities at a high level. But can you clarify, in terms of the criticism, I have to say, I've been tweeting about this a lot. I've been telling people about this event a lot. I was at a very good event at Civic Hungary last night, and I couldn't resist to put this question last night to a great panel of MEPs, not because I was plugging tonight, but because actually, the more I talk about it, the angrier I found myself with the complete injustice and the bullying and the targeting of Hungarian students. It's really made me incredibly angry. And I've been sharing this also on LinkedIn, and quite a number of my teacher colleagues back in the UK have shared it. I said share it if you think this is a bad move or wrong, just unjust, But the one question I still have, even after everything you said, is in terms of the criticism that's being made, is it only government politicians that are on the boards of the public trust universities? And if so, how would you respond to that? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying, what is factually the case, and what's your take on that?
To the best of my knowledge, you also have like middle-ranking politicians. But again, so mayors, for example, this is really the best example. It has been basically 10% of the composition of this board of trustees. 10%. It means that even if you want to take a decision that is very political, for example, you are a tiny minority in the board of trustees. And who else is sitting in the board of trustees? Big businessmen, known intellectuals, personalities. And next to the curatorium, the board of trustees, you also have the senatorium. I'm not an expert in the way Hungarian universities are organized, but it's not the only organ of management, by the way. So you have others. And sometimes the board of trustees are dealing with the funds, but sometimes not, because what we also need to understand in the vast majority of the cases, European funds like Horizon and Erasmus are direct management. So basically, it's between the European Commission and some national agencies, if I remember well, and it goes straight to the universities. So sometimes, and also something that is legally very interesting. Somebody confirmed that to me yesterday. One of the lawyers who is dealing with the case, because the universities are now they filed a complaint against this decision in front of the Court of Justice. You can perfectly legally make the difference between the universities and the Board of Trustees. Those are two different legal entities. No one thought about it when they drafted this decision, or it's just that maybe they thought about it, but they really wanted to get the maximum level of punishment. Again, this is a legal and political question that I would like to put on the table.
Frank?
So I'm a university professor, and I've been on boards of trustees in the past in England, where I've had to have the Archbishop of Canterbury's representative on the board, and I had a variety of different small-time, mid-level politicians on the board. Based on my experience, I've drawn the conclusion that politicians are not exactly a gift to university life, but that's a different story. So that, we can have a debate, a legitimate debate about the rights and the wrongs of having politicians on a board. I think that's a legitimate argument. It kind of bears upon academic freedom and a number of other issues. But I think that's very different, having a legitimate debate, because there has been no debate on this issue. Certainly no debate Europe-wide about the character of university leadership, what it should be and how it should be composed. And certainly it's been recognized until now that that's a national responsibility. So being an academic and a researcher, if I dig deep as to what's really going on here, I've got to draw the conclusion, and I'm interested in your opinion on this, that this has got nothing to do with education. It's got nothing to do with the quality of university life. It's got nothing to do with anything that's remotely connected to the academic enterprise, but is entirely motivated by political calculations. That's the only conclusion I could draw. So then I take a step backward, and I say, what is the political calculation that is really driving this? And the conclusion that I come to, and maybe I'm not as kind of sophisticated as some of the people around the European Union who do these things, is that the calculation is based upon the fact that there's a body of individuals within the European Union who want to put the maximum amount of pressure on the Hungarian government, want to do the maximum amount of pressure on the Hungarian government to discredit the Hungarian government. And in particular, what they want to do is basically send out a signal that as long as this government is in power, then the universities will suffer, young people will suffer, the quality of life in Hungary will suffer because of what the government is. And I think by doing that, what they are really trying to do is create the condition for what is classically known as regime change, where they're essentially using their instruments and they're using their legal norms as a way of bringing that particular objective around. I cannot think of any other reason why this is happening. It's such a kind of Kafkaesque sort of series of events that I cannot really believe that there's any other reason why this is going on. And given the fact that these are political calculations that we're discussing, I'm just really worried that arguments about the finer points of the law and arguments about the finer points of what the academic enterprise is all about is not going to cut very much ice with the people that have initiated this. And I'm just wondering, what is the best strategy for reacting to this? I mean, it seems to me that one of the things that we should be doing is organizing a Europe-wide campaign on the issue of academic freedom. And we got to, because academic freedom is so important for the lifeblood of a humanist society that it's not something that we can just throw aside. So I just wanted to know what you guys on the platform think, whether I'm just being looking at it too politically or whether there's something else that is going on.
Me as a student, I've never witnessed any politicians take part in university life whatsoever, zero. It didn't impact what I studied, where I studied, what research has been done at the university. So it really didn't impact. So I agree with you 100%.
And yes, Frank, what some people might answer to you is like, how can you think this is politically motivated if you have a decision of the Commission that is 67 pages long, and then it has been adopted by the qualified majority of the ministers, and we have produced a lot of evidence about it. In my case, I will reach the same conclusions as you through legal arguments. Let me just give you four. I mean, it's so blunt that again there, when you infringe your own rules and your own mantras and your own principles, and sorry, rather mantras than principles, it means that indeed, I mean, you have a strong suspicion, you know, it's allowed to have intellectually, that actually it is also politically motivated. Again, I insist proportionality. It is written in the regulation, confirmed by the Court of Justice, and then suddenly it's 100% of the Hungarian students from those universities. 100, no exceptions, no calculation, 100. What is proportionate about 100? I don't get it. Second, discrimination. How many times we hear the word discrimination every day in this bubble? Sometimes on good grounds, sometimes on more fallacious ones. In this case, it is a blunt discrimination against other EU member states, but also third countries, as I told you. Again, countries like Turkey, Macedonia, Serbia, Norway, Iceland, but also through Erasmus Mundus, potentially all the other countries in the world. This is blunt discrimination on the basis of nationality. This is one of the religious dogmas of the European Union, and they're just infringing it, you know, without any type of nuances. Also, the free movement, you know, one of the fundamental freedoms of the European Union. It is sacred. It's part of your rights as a citizen, basically, your right to move freely. So, okay, legally speaking, those students can still take their ID and fly to Malaga if they want to have a nice party. They can still do that. But again, Erasmus is closely interlinked as well with this right of mobility. And also, you know, the fact that it's, again, a massive example of double standards. So, unfortunately, double standards is nothing new. We know that they can be applied and no one basically in the total indifference of a lot of players. But in this case, we are really reaching limits of double standard that are both laughable and worrisome. And so, you know, for those four legal arguments, again, we have good reasons. And also, you know, look at the negotiations, how they are going on. We said the problem is that you have 10% of politicians, they resign 4 months ago, and we still have the problem. And suddenly comes a letter from the European Commission say, oh, we identify 6 more things, 6 more aspects that we would like to address. And so this is how you negotiate, basically. So again, those things also make me think that indeed, you know, there are some political motivations behind.
Do you know where the genesis of this actually came from? Who and where did it actually start to raise that there's a huge problem here with the way the Erasmus program is carried out in Hungary?
I think it was one of the, I think maybe, Robert, you can also shed a bit of light there, but when the reform in 2018 was applied, it reached already, it was criticized by the opposition. I think anything that is criticized by the opposition is very, very much echoed here in Brussels. I give you a very concrete example. Last year, when I was part of the rule of law dialogue with the European Commission, you know, so every year they have, well, since the last 2 years at least, they have a rule of law dialogue and report for all the countries. Wow, not only for 2, now for 27. There's a progress there. There's a progress. But so I was interviewed as part of the Hungarian civil society, whatever that means. And so we got questions. And actually a battery of questions. And some of them were related to the functioning of this the public trust. 1 year later, we found it in the conditionality mechanism.
Do you want to address sort of where you think this came from? It's sort of questioning of the...
Yeah, well, I read it in the news, in the media, that, okay, if the government will change the university models like this, then there will be consequences, we promise. That was basically the media headline. Mm-hmm. And it felt weird by the get-go.
Yeah. Rodrigo, 2 aspects. The first is, in the short term, people here that are concerned about what's happening with the Erasmus program, parents of students and future students, what can people do? How can people be heard? Where should they take action? That's a short-term political aspect to this, that how can people challenge the injustice that's going on? In the longer term, what Frank's suggesting is that there's more salient issues concerning academic freedom that are really brought into question with this Erasmus campaign. What do you think we could do about that Europe-wide?
First question, it's important to speak up. And I'm not only speaking here about students, but also parents, for example, and also universities. Also universities, maybe not all of them realize what is going on, but it's of an extreme gravity. And speak up means, for example, write directly to those who took the decision, write to the ministers who voted this decision, write to Commissioner Hahn, commissioner responsible for the European budget. He's leading those negotiations. Just write. They have addresses. Write 5 lines, 10 lines. Hello, I'm a Erasmus. I want to be an Erasmus student, and I don't know if I can go next year to Spain or to Sweden. And tell me why. I don't understand. As simple as that. It's important to speak up. Parents, Mr. Hahn, I'm sorry, but my child is supposed to go in Erasmus in 3 years, and I don't understand why he cannot do that. Or maybe a Swedish parent saying, look, I was supposed to send my kid, he wanted to go to Hungary, to Budapest. He cannot do that anymore. Why? Please tell us why. I think those are basic things that should be done in the coming weeks. I mean, and you know, here is a bubble. I'm not trying to be too offending, saying that we all live in bubbles, and this is not the only bubble that we have in Europe. It's not only here, but this one doesn't hear the noise because it's further away. So, and it can understand some other angles of some of the decision it takes if people do noise outside. So please do noise. Do noise. Youngsters, parents, please do noise. Students. On the more long term, to speak about academic freedom, to have a fair debate about academic freedom, yeah, it might be important, politically important. I just want to stress that for me, the problem today with academic freedom is wokeism, is cancel culture. We have the best, most prestigious universities in the Western world that are, you know, firing the best professors. You have a deleterious atmosphere in the campuses because basically they try to muzzle anyone. You have a type of Maoist 2.0 of Maoism in higher education that has been totally hijacked by ideological reasons. You have the best faculties that are teaching that Mozart was colonialist and that mathematics are racially biased. This is the problem of academic freedom, and this is a problem that the EU never addressed. And now the only angle they want to take on academic freedom is whether, you know, 10% of politicians in Board of Trustees, 10% of politicians who resign in the Board of Trustees represent a real threat, a sufficiently important threat for the EU budget. But this is a very bad joke. This is a very bad joke. We have a lot of things to say about academic freedom. And yes, in the Western world especially. You know, this, it's called cancel culture. It's called, you know, like the idealization. And it's also called into turning temples of wisdom into centers of indoctrination. And who is speaking about it? No one here in the EU. The only problem of academic freedom is this one. Is it really the only one? So basically, that's the only concern you have. It means that you are looking at the little leaf on the branch of the trees and you don't look at the forest.
Can we give the microphone over here? Here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Agnes, and I work at the European Parliament. And for me, I have two things to add to this conversation. Firstly, I have a chance to listen MEPs talking about Erasmus because I'm following the CULT committee, and each and every one of them, regardless of their political group, worrying about the Erasmus, the success of Erasmus, and particularly one thing, which is inclusion, how it can be more inclusive, how more students, lecturers, universities could be participated in it. And so what's very interesting for me that none of them, except the Hungarian member, talking about this issue. When we are talking about the fact that the European Parliament sometimes, not sometimes, but most of the time, having a very strong political role and trying to influence the public opinion, here there is a complete silence. And I hope it's not about what Frank just said, that there is some kind of like consensus that they don't talk about this because it's driven by some other political or deeper political reason. That was my first comment. I don't know, like just to talk about it a little bit, if you have any opinion in it. And the other one is kind of an advertisement that's talking about what can we do. We are trying to do a lot of things in the European Parliament. Next Wednesday, there is going to be a hearing with Hungarian rectors and students on Erasmus. Like the title is Let the Other Side Be Heard as well. So we think that it's very important, and please spread the word and read the news and try to participate as if you can, because yeah, that's what's the most important, I think, just to do something to try to stir up the public opinion and let a lot of people know about this very important issue.
More letters to Han, yeah.
Yeah, no, just to react quickly on your first point and on the second as well. It's very important. So yes, it's thank you for organizing that. It's really part of the noise that we need. Inclusion. This is not another mantra, you know. And at the end, I call them mantra because if you don't apply it in concrete cases like this one, it means that it's only an empty shell. It's just a concept to justify your intellectual laziness and your hypocrisy. And so if you are basically paying lip service every time you take a microphone in the cult committee to speak about inclusion, and then you shut up on an issue like that, it means that you are no longer credible. I mean, that inclusion actually doesn't mean anything to you except just a buzzword to speak in a cult committee or to simply run your political battles. It's a scandal. Again, that's also, I think, pleads my case. Same thing applies to discrimination, to proportionality, to double standards, and to free movement. It doesn't mean anything if you are able to apply them in such an arbitrary manner.
Thinking now of what we've experienced over the last while in relation to this, how optimistic are you that the negotiations could be successful and that there would be some relenting by those who are really trying to push out the Hungarian students?
I'm normally optimistic. I didn't... Magyar pessimismus is not so contagious on me, except this time, I must say. Magyar realism. I don't think the problem here is that, again, if I were in the government, I would have to be pragmatic and maybe I will have to swallow more than I should. But as a lawyer, from a legal point of view, they're asking already far too much. They're already asking far too much. And it's also maybe the problem of conditionality. Some things that the EU is asking make sense. Some others do not make sense. And again, are really an encroachment of national competences. They are pushing some changes that are almost constitutional. And at the end, you know, a financial blackmail in times of war and in times of economic crisis, it's very hard to justify, especially...
And it can set a dangerous precedent for the future and for other programs and other countries as they begin to smuggle in more things that they require you to do in order to get the funds.
And who's next, basically? Because we know that who's next is Poland, but maybe there could be also another one. You know, in Spain, we had elections last week, and we will have general elections. The general elections were triggered at the end of the month. What if, for example, you have a right-wing government that wishes, you know, to go a bit against the mainstream? Are they going to be sanctioned? I don't think so, because, you know, one of the unwritten rules of the European Union is in order to get sanctioned, you also need to have the right size. And Hungary has the right size for that. They're not too small and they're not too big. Oh, it's perfect. Spain is a bit too big to be sanctioned, you know? Again, speaking about the rule of law, size matters, okay? Size matters. And then also what I wanted to say, John, is that I think that the best way to solve this situation is to wait until the next European elections. I don't think it is going to be properly solved now, in the coming year, in the next 12 months. With the new parliament, it might be a different story. It might be a totally different story. Now, I don't think that anyone has really the will to solve it properly. So what I expect is maybe some leeway, is to accept some students, to basically be more flexible on the mobility, for example, maybe on some of the consortia on the horizon, to give a bit of leeway. But I don't think this time the situation will be properly solved, whatever the Hungarians are ready, the Hungarian government are ready to swallow. I don't think it will be solved until 6th of June next year.
Okay. Going to the back here. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Csaba. If this is a politically motivated attack, how do you think we can resolve this issue? And also, why would we wait for the next European Parliament election if this is not their decision to make?
Yes and no. It's a very good remark. You're right. I said it's not for the parliament to adopt this decision, but the parliament will be crucial in electing the president of the commission. And this president of the commission will be also elected on a different coalition, or at least on a coalition that might be a bit more ecumenical and might include also some specific measures. So I think here is also the job of the MEPs, as from the 6th of June, to put on the table a very simple measure. We will vote for you, dear candidate of the presidents of to the presidents of the European Commission, once you promise us that this regime of conditionality is going to drastically change and is going to address only cases of fraud, conflict of interest, but nothing else. And also only within the competences of the European Union, not beyond. And so if this is part of the coalition agreement, then a new parliament could definitely be decisive on that. Let's change the regulation and let's make sure that it's used as a regulation to a legal tool to protect the budget, not to promote the rule of law, which is a very, very, by the way, very generic term. Let's face it, rule of law doesn't mean the same in Germany or in France. They have different legal traditions. So let's not take it as an excuse. I'll just give an example, also a legal example that also justifies my fears. I read the judgment of the Court of Justice in the last 2 days. They also say, for example, that the rule of law, that discrimination is part of the rule of law concept. So you can also think about the next legal battle that Hungary might have. It might be called the law on the protection of minors and the concept of discrimination. You can easily make it fall within the concept of the rule of law according to this judgment. And maybe Hungary will be sanctioned, financially sanctioned, because they have a law on the protection of minors that no one likes here, but I don't care if they don't like it, because it's a national competence. And by the way, I like it very much.
Thank you.
I don't need. Yeah, so given my background as a street person, I think what we should do, and maybe you guys can help in Budapest, and we'll do our bit, is maybe get 200-300 Hungarian students to come to Brussels with a T-shirt saying, "We want freedom now. Give us back our Erasmus," something along those lines, with lots of noise. I mean, I've seen Italians do this in Brussels, and I've seen some Spanish people do it. They're much more lively than Hungarians are in this respect. But there's no reason why we can't learn from other nationalities and really stir the, whatever you want to call that, really create a bit of noise, because unless we create a bit of noise and try to get some media coverage for that, it's just going to be swept under the carpet. And the more I'm listening to you, the more I think that we need to be a little bit more proactive and try to sort of shake things up a little bit by particularly getting an injection of young people making noise and a bit of music and all that. I mean, what do you think of that kind of strategy?
This gentleman here.
First of all, Frank, you have a support from us from KU Leuven, because we are also master students at KU Leuven. So if we have to mobilize students, then we're going to bring it. Another question, like, also to me it is interesting that this decision is going to be applicable from September, right? At the same time, when it is scheduled by the Ukrainian government to close the Hungarian minority schools. So do you see any correlation between these two deadlines? And maybe is there a symbolism in September? So both of these decisions will be valid from September.
I also want to ask something for clarification about the scope of this decision that has been adopted by the Council. Does it refer only to Hungarian institution? For instance, if you're a Spaniard or a Swede and you're studying in Hungary, does that apply to you as well? And also, what about Hungarian students who live maybe in Belgium or in other university? Does this decision discriminate them as well? And also, you mentioned a couple of examples. This problem with the Board of Trustees has happened in other Western countries, in Germany and UK and France. Can you perhaps elaborate a bit more on that, if it would be possible to compare if there are any differences between the two cases?
Yes, quickly to react on the three, and also Robert, you as well, if you want, of course. Frank, yes, noise. For example, another thing that some Hungarian students can do is from Budapest to write to the EU embassies that were involved in that. You know, I remember perfectly that some EU ambassadors were demonstrating 1 or 2 years ago in front of the Hungarian ministry when the Hungarian government decided to put in the constitution that gender doesn't exist and it's basically male and female. Ambassadors demonstrated. Well, why don't you Hungarian students call the EU representatives in Budapest or the German ambassador in Budapest? We would like to speak to you, by the way. Or you just do a bit of noise in front of those embassies. Why not? So noise matters a lot, and this is actually the only thing that they can hear here. Your first question on, I don't think that it's correlated, the Ukrainian case and the Erasmus case. I don't think it's correlated at all. I don't think it's symbolic. I mean, I don't think anyone has a high sense of symbolism here. The thing is that, yeah, it's an academic year, so it means that as from September, this decision will apply. It means that you will have some Erasmus students going next year, Hungarian Erasmus students going next year, because basically their contract was signed now before the sanctions will enter into force. And regarding the situation of the Hungarian schools in Ukraine, I think it's not a matter that is very interesting here in the bubble. No one cares here in the bubble, sadly. No one cares. To start with, because for them, the term minority refers to other things, not really to linguistic minorities. On your more legal questions, it applies to Hungarian universities that are constituted as public trusts, as kekvaz, as something alapítvány. Sorry, I don't know the entire name. So it means that a Hungarian student that is based here in KU Leuven, for example, is absolutely not affected by that. But it means that indeed, for example, a Spanish student that studies 5 years in a row in the Corvinus University in Budapest is affected by that, because he cannot claim, to go on Erasmus. It basically is a right that he might no longer have. On the concrete examples, I'll just give you one. The University of Berlin, the mayor of Berlin is systematically part of the board of trustees of the University of Berlin. The difference is, let's be fair, let's be nuanced as well, is that he's entitled to be there as the mayor, not as a minister that has been appointed for life, basically. And again, yes, I also share your point of view, Frank. I don't think it's a very good idea to have politicians in board of trustees, unless if it's a mayor or something like that. And again, whoever the mayor is. So let's be critical. I think maybe that was not a good decision. But again, it's not enough to deduce that this decision, it might be stupid, but it's not a threat to the EU budget. It's not a serious threat to the EU budget. And if you start, suddenly assuming that, whatever politicians are there, it's a threat for the EU budget, then do it also with the mayor of Berlin. By the way, a city that only elects socialist mayors, huh?
Robert?
Oh, I just wanted to add that in general, in Western European universities on the Erasmus platform, Budapest is very high on the list. Like, a lot of students want to go there. It's the first 5 spots usually that first get taken. And so Budapest taken out of this circulation system is just very damaging to Western European students as well. And it's not just Budapest, of course. It's Debrecen, it's Szeged, it's Pécs. It's all great universities, great towns, great cities that cannot be visited by foreigners, which is basically isolating a country on purpose.
The reputational damage is a very good point. It takes 1 month to lose your reputation. It takes 1 decade to recover it. And in or even more. And in a globalized world where, we are all struggling also for talent, qualified people, research, innovation are of the essence, it's already difficult to compete with a fund like Horizon that is already very politicized. But if on top of that you get this toxic reputation that no one wants to really work with you, and let's face it, let's be honest, it's not that the academic circles, they are not renowned for their courage neither. And so at the end, it's also a place where you can easily get excluded, and then it will take a decade, if not more, to come back. Think about it too, please.
Any other questions? Please raise your hand. Any other comments? There's your opportunity. No? Okay. I think I'll bring it to a close there. I want to say, though, in closing, that MCC Brussels really cares about students and really cares about education. It's one of the issues that, as a think tank here, we're very committed to. So I see this as being the start of our work on this issue. It's an issue of great injustice. Pink Floyd, the progressive rock group, had a song called, song with the refrain, "Leave those kids alone." And I think that we want the EU to leave those kids alone, to leave those Hungarian kids alone, and to leave the Erasmus program alone, and to stop using the program in this way. So we definitely will be starting to work more on this, and we're hoping that everybody here this evening will commit to taking an action within the next day about the Erasmus program. And we're hoping that those who are watching on the live stream will also commit to taking an action, because it's only by taking action, by making some noise, that we can reverse this terrible injustice. I'd like you to give a round of applause and thank our two panelists. And I want to thank you for coming along, and I hope you'll join us for some refreshments afterwards. Thank you.